Hi, it's no secret that we live in a media-rich world, and it's no secret that we're not only quoting text anymore, but we are quoting all sorts of media. We're producing all sorts of media. So I thought I'd do this little talk and create some guidance for how we might find and effectively use the work of others in an honest and fair way, and um, and to look at the various different types of buckets into which intellectual property falls. So, as a true digital citizen, you should know how to ethically use the works of others to build your own creative products: music, art, videos, stories, presentations. Just as you'd want others to respect your originality, others expect you to do the same when it comes to remixing their intellectual property. So we should be conscious of the way we use the works of others, and I wanted to share some guidelines for you. And so let's start by looking at the first of the buckets, and that's the Creative Commons movement. Creative Commons is a critical tool for digital age creation and sharing. And we ought to celebrate Creative Commons, often represented with two little c's, as opposed to the one big C, which is copyright. It's a movement folks are using for sharing with others how they would like their work to be reused. It respects intellectual property while recognizing an open cultural landscape and makes it easier for us to legally and ethically share and build on each other's works. So when a work is created, automatically it is protected by copyright. Creative Commons licenses allow content creators to maintain the copyright that is automatically protected, but to modify it beyond the all rights reserved, the big C, to a variety of more liberal or copyleft licenses or little c options. So the creator lets the community know whether and or how he or she wants a work to be reused or remixed. Let's take a look at this little video that offers background on the Creative Commons movement.
Have you ever wondered how to download and share digital content legally? How do you let people know that you want them to reuse your own work? Creative Commons licenses can help you do both. We'll show you how. Our world's exploded with digital opportunities. Now we can communicate, share, and work together using the exceptional distribution network that is the internet. Information and content can fly between us in exciting new ways. But it's important to know that when something is created, say a photo, a document, or a music track, it's automatically protected by copyright. Copyright enables people to say who can share and reuse their creations. You must always obtain someone's permission before sharing or reusing their work, even when it's posted online. But what if a creator wants everyone to use their work, without the hassle of granting permission over and over? This is where Creative Commons can help. Creative Commons provides licensing tools that are free to use. You can apply a license to your work, which refines your copyright and streamlines how you give permission. Zach here downloads a photo called CC Kiwi that he wants to use in his science project. He can do this without asking Kiri, the photographer, first, because she's already given permission with a Creative Commons license. Kiri's license is legally robust, but easy for Zach to understand. She's told the world, including Zach, that they can use CC Kiwi as long as they acknowledge her as the original photographer. There are more rules Kiri could have included. Creative Commons licenses are made up of license elements. You can think of them as rules, and each have their own special symbol. This is attribution. It means that Zach must acknowledge Kiri when he publishes his science project containing her photo. This is non-commercial. It means no one else but Kiri is permitted to make money from CC Kiwi. Tim wants to print the photo onto t-shirts and distribute them to friends. He can do this, but he must not sell them. This is no derivatives, and it means that Kiri hasn't given permission to change her photo. Kate can use CC Kiwi on her design blog, but will need to ask Kiri before retouching or mixing up the image. And this is share alike. It means new creations that use CC Kiwi need to carry the same license. Jack incorporates his own remix of CC Kiwi in his video installation, but he must share the work under the same terms that Kiri has. Each Creative Commons license gives permission to share and includes the attribution rule. So people who find your Creative Commons licensed work are automatically allowed to share it, but are required to acknowledge you if they do. The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any. That use CC Kiwi need to carry the same license. Jack incorporates his own remix of CC Kiwi in his video installation, but he must share the work under the same terms that Kiri has. Each Creative Commons license gives permission to share and includes the attribution rule. So people who find your Creative Commons licensed work are automatically allowed to share it, but are required to acknowledge you if they do. The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any.
So how does one search for Creative Commons content? Well, it's not very hard.
The other 3 license elements are optional, and you can choose which ones to add, if any.
So how does one search for Creative Commons content? Well, it's not very hard. Creative Commons itself has a search page, sort of listed at the bottom of this page, and there are several. But now there is a new search, and the search has some features that I think you'll want to know about. So there is a search box, and you can filter for images that can be used commercially and images that you can remix. You can search either title, creator, or tags. You can decide how many results you want per page. I think I'll go with 50. You can search from either I guess there's a larger photography collection, or 500px, which I just discovered and it's very cool, Flickr, or you can search cultural works. And so the rest of the cool stuff happens after you do your search. So I'm going to do a search for giraffes, merely because I like them. And when I hit go, below these filters, you'll see that you have your results. And then once you find one that you like, click on it. And you can actually do some things right from here. You can see the attribution, you can save to a list, or you can star. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I did sign up for an account, and I haven't signed in right now. Oh, I am signed in. It says sign out. So you can sign up for an account to get those features. But for right now, let's just click on this image. And notice, actually, it's a really lovely image of a giraffe licking a pole, I think. And on it, you get information. You get information about the title. You get information about the creator. You get the license. You find out where the original source was. And you can very easily copy this as text to put in a document, or copy the credit as HTML to embed in a website or a blog post. And when you do that, everything's hyperlinked. So you get a link to the license to describe the license to the user. You get a link to the creator, and you get a direct link to where the image came from. And then you can see other people's tags. I have no tags for this item, but I can make it one of my favorites. So when I go back here, I can see a list of images I've liked, or create a list as well. And then I can add my own tags to make this easier for me to find later on. So this is Creative Commons new search. Many portals for finding Creative Commons images, music, and video. I've listed some of my favorites here for images and sounds. And it's important to note that most of the major search engines, including Google and Bing, have Creative Commons searches, making it easy to isolate images that you can not only find, but reuse afterwards. And so you may want to explore them in your favorite search. And the video that we just looked at examined what the various different license icons mean. But I do want to share with you that there were charts all over the place, and there's one in Flickr that allow you to kind of go back and take a look at what these mean and share them with the people that you teach or work with. Those four conditions, again, attribution, share alike, non-commercial, and non-derivative, may be combined in different ways, and then the licenses look like this. So you can see that the most liberal is the one on top, which is attribution only, and then the others have various different conditions. A sub area of this is called CC0, and that is one part of what we call public domain. CC0 allows you to waive any interest at all in your works, placing them in as completely free as possible category so that others can use upon it, enhance, and reuse the work without any restriction, even that attribution. And so CC0 is another interesting section of this Pearl Trees gallery displays many of my own favorite CC0 images. This is helpful if you're working with faculty members, teachers, and students, because you're not required to cite the material that has a CC0 label on it. It's important to note that not all of this is perfect. Some of the portals that you'll find do not accurately label the images. You may want to check for individual images and guide people in that direction. But if you have folks who really are looking for images to go with lectures that don't come with rights if they're republishing them in a syllabus or a course, or students using in a presentation, this is an easy way to go. And in most cases, the creators have generously given their materials and don't expect attribution. There is a fallacy, a mistake that most people make. They believe that because they're using Creative Commons materials, they don't need to attribute the source. In most cases, that's not really true. There is the exception of CC0 and perhaps public domain, but even in the case of public domain, I would attribute. But Creative Commons, in a very handy way, offers us advice on how to give attribution to Creative Commons material. They describe that the citation here relating to Creative Commons 10th birthday celebration is an ideal attribution. And they say it's because it shares the title of the work, the author of the work with a link back to his or her profile, the source, linked to the original page where it was created or stored first, and then the type of license that the material was granted or given. And so it also advises how you attribute the authors of a CC work will depend on whether you modify the content. If you create a derivative, if there are multiple sources, you may want to click on that link and find out more. In a world of user-generated content, you're not only going to want to use the licenses that others have applied to their content, you're likely going to want to apply licenses to your own content. You're going to need to be the go-to person in your library or facility institution who might share with folks who are creating exactly how they might do that and how they might guide others in reusing the work they themselves create. Creative Commons. I've put a Creative Commons license on my own work. So this is not just for professional media producers, it's for everybody who creates media. And so Creative Commons has a kind of wizard that if you fill in the features that you want, you make the clicks that most apply to you and how you want your work reused, then what comes out at the end is one of those little logos with the attribution only in this case, and an embed code that you can put in the work that you're creating. So so that's important, especially when you work with kids and you want them to make these decisions and learn about Creative Commons. So this licensing also can be available, and it'll allow you to attach, when you search for these materials, sometimes you can easily get the code from the search source also. The same is true in YouTube. You can search for images using Creative Commons filters, or put the licenses on your own media that you create and share on YouTube. We talked just for a second about public domain, but public domain is another area of intellectual property. It includes two major groups of information. One is government content, which is never covered by copyright. And then the second is material for which copyright has expired. In those cases, you may ask to use those materials. You may use the materials without asking permission, as long as you attribute. Very often, public domain content is not clearly labeled, and so as you look through the content on Library of Congress or National Archives, also look for the notes relating to public domain to make sure that the material that you're reusing is indeed reusable and is under the category of public domain. You can find public domain content in a variety of portals, including the ones listed here. And there is a public domain Sherpa tool which calculates public domain, and you can use that little calculator. As a little video you might choose to use on public domain. The next bucket that we're going to look at is fair use. And one of the things that is important to keep in mind is that however fabulous Creative Commons and public domain are, sometimes you really will need to use copyrighted material in your own work. The example I give here is you're looking to demonstrate the way Native Americans have been portrayed in feature films. And so you're not going to be using clip art necessarily. You may really want to use current media. You may want to use Disney's Pocahontas or the Lone Ranger videos that might still be under copyright. You may want to use a popular film like Dances with Wolves. Also, if you're reviewing a book, you may want to use its cover art. The fact is you can use copyright content without asking permission if you believe that your use falls under the doctrine of fair use. It is a little complicated, but in general, there are a couple of tests. The most powerful that have been applied recently is when you transform the original content or repurpose it or add value to it in your own remix. You should be able to claim fair use. American University's Center for Social Media asked these two tests or questions. Did the unlicensed use transform the material taken from the copyrighted work by using it for a different purpose than that of the original, or did it just repeat the work for the same intent or value as the original? And was the material taken appropriate in kind and amount considering the nature of the copyrighted work and of the use? So examples of transformative use are satire and parody, negative or critical commentary, book reviews for instance, positive commentary, using it to start a discussion for illustration or example, or for incidental use. The American University's Recut, Reframe, Recycle site offers very specific examples of transformative use in video production. And a variety of new codes of practice in fair use are emerging that represent agreed upon norms and boundaries that help clarify what fair use looks like in all sorts of circumstances, including education, libraries, documentary filmmaking, poetry, media studies, dance, and more. And you'll want to download and consult some of those codes, especially if you're working in those areas when you are using materials under fair use. There's a video that I'm linking to below that shows some examples of fair use, and there's a link to the various different codes of practice. Let me see if I can just share with you how extensive they are for orphan works, for visual arts, academic and research libraries, poetry. There's several pages of these. And so I am hoping that for your particular area of study or work that you'll pay close attention to those. And these videos can be used in explaining fair use and remix culture to students and all of those people that you work with. Your own original work sounds pretty obvious, but you can remix your own original work in creative projects. So if you're stuck for content, there's no reason not to make your own. Take your photographs, make your own videos, and reuse it in your own work. Make sure you apply Creative Commons licenses if you want to describe to others how to use it. And there's so many ways to create music these days with GarageBand or iMovie for video, or Soundation or Jam Studio, loads of ways to create the sounds that would go with videos or other creative work. Another category is clip art, of course, and not all clip art is the same. Some is public domain and free to use. Others may be used only with permission. Still others, clip art sources want you to subscribe to the site to use. Anyway, so clip art is another category. It's important to know, as I mentioned before when we were talking about orphan stuff, media are sometimes orphaned. It's hard to describe who actually did or determine who actually created a particular media element, a song or image. People all the time upload images without attribution and misrepresent their licensing and ownership. When in doubt, try to identify ownership, and sometimes you may have to try to contact creators. It's easier these days to identify unidentified flying images. We may have looked before at Google Images, into which you can drag an image. When you do that, very often it will be easier to identify the creator of the image when you see where it has existed previously. So do that if you can. And if you have any doubts about whether or not to use copyrighted media, whether your permission is fair, it is always possible for you to, well, most of the time possible for you to contact the content creator before you reuse or remix it. I've had some success actually finding the Twitter handle of somebody and asking permission through Twitter. Either if I know them, if I'm following them through a direct message, but often just through a public tweet. Some sites, of course, will give you information about how they want their material to be reused or remixed. So let's recap. We explored a copyright-friendly toolkit. We started by thinking about what copyright is and thinking about the importance of the Creative Commons movement, which allows us to use the materials of others with their permission, their express permission, through a variety of different types of licenses, so that we could build new knowledge and build creativity on the shoulders of giants. And it's a very important and growing movement. We looked at the various different licenses. We also looked at two different types of pretty open materials. So one was public domain, the kinds of material that exist that are out of copyright, either because they are created by the government or they've been around for a very long time. Often these are cultural works. These really do require attribution, as does almost everything within the Creative Commons movement, within the Creative Commons licenses, as well as copyrighted material. So all of this requires citation. And some materials, it's hard to tell whether they're in public domain or not. Even just because they've been out for a long time doesn't mean that they are necessarily free and public domain. So you want to look for this public domain license with the crust through the sea to see which ones are, and a growing number of them are actually going to be labeled. Not everything, of course, at this point is labeled public domain. Another area of what people are considering public domain is the CC0 movement. And that's media in which the creator has said, hey, take my work and use it. I don't even need attribution. Sometimes people give attribution as a courtesy, but there's examples of those are in the CC0 image portal board that we've created and used for our classes. So those are some various different types of public domain. Also, as we think about intellectual property, we're thinking about our ability to use the work of others without permission, because we're claiming fair use. And on the poster or flyer, you'll see a variety of different situations in which various different industries and professions have created codes of practices for fair use where they feel that it is okay to use this material without getting permission, as we call them fair use. Of course, it is a good idea to try to get permission when you're using the material of others, and we talked about strategies for getting permission. Of course, as you build creative work, you could use your own original work, images, music, writing as components. That's another area. There is also clip art, and there's also the notion of what happens when we don't know where something comes from, what I was calling unidentified flying images and other media, some of which we can identify through a Google reverse image search and some other tools. And that's kind of a summary of some of the big intellectual property buckets that we're going to be looking at. Remember that just because something is Creative Commons does not mean you don't need to attribute credit. The only case in which that is true generally is material that is labeled specifically CC0, and then, of course, your own original work. Hope this helps.